Hello Year 4, this is your Monday's English lesson. And this week for English we are going to focus on sentences. And we're going to try and use a range of sentences in our writing. So I have a question for you. What type of sentences do we know? So think about all the things we say in Year 4, what sentences do me and Miss Paget go on about all the time. So if you pause the video now, and I want you to write down the 3 different types of sentences that we think about in Year 4. Okay, welcome back and well done for giving that a go. Okay, so one of them will be our simple sentence, another is compound sentence, and the other one is complex sentence. So we're going to try and use all 3 of those types of sentences in our writing, and this provides a range of sentences in our writing. It makes it a little bit more exciting, so we're not using the same kind of sentence over and over again. So we're just going to go through the definitions of each one. So on this slide here I have compound, complex and simple, and you need to match the definitions up to the correct ones. So I'm just going to read them to you. So a sentence with only one clause and one subject. A sentence that has 2 clauses that make sense on their own and are joined with a fanboys. A sentence containing a subordinate clause, for example, embedded or relative, or uses a subordinate conjunction. So when we talk about relative clause, that's when we use our relative pronouns like who, okay? Embedded is the clause in between the 2 other clauses. So we've gone through those briefly, but I think you can match all these ones up. So pause the video now and match them up for me, please. Okay, welcome back and well done for giving that a go. Let's go through the answers then. So a sentence with only one clause and one subject. Now I know that's a simple sentence. Okay, only has the one clause and one subject. A sentence that has 2 clauses that make sense on their own and are joined with a fanboys. Now we use our fanboys and ISOWUBUBs to help us identify compound and complex sentences. And I know when I use a fanboy and I have 2 clauses on either side and they make sense on their own, I have used a compound sentence. So we're putting 2 clauses together, joined by the fanboys, which is in the middle, and that makes a compound sentence, and compound means to join together. And then the last one must be complex. So it's a sentence containing a subordinate clause, for example, embedded or relative or using a subordinate conjunction. And a subordinating conjunction is our ISOWUBUB conjunctions, and they help us build complex sentences. So I have now got some examples of the 3 different types of sentences, and then I'll explain to you what your activity is. So I have a simple sentence here. So a sentence with only one clause. So Job was sitting under the large oak tree. Okay, I've got one subject and I've got one clause. I've got my full stop and capital letter to show my sentence. And I have got an expanded noun phrase here, which I'm going to highlight, which is absolutely fine. So obviously include. And that's all the information I've got. I've just got one piece of information there. Compound sentence. So a sentence that has 2 clauses that make sense on their own. So could you identify the fanboys that I have used in this sentence? So it says, Job had a soft maroon hat and she lived inside an old birch tree. Almost didn't say tree correctly then. Can you identify the fanboys in that sentence? Okay, well done if you've written down or said aloud or told somebody that the fanboys is and. Okay, that's what I am joining together. Okay, so this must mean, let me get a straight line. This is one clause. Job had a soft maroon hat. Do you think that makes sense on its own? So if I say it aloud to you again, I want you to think, oh, does that sentence make sense on its own? Job had a soft maroon hat. Yeah, It does make sense on its own, doesn't it? Yeah, it makes sense on its own. So we haven't got any, you're not sat there thinking, well, hang on, what are you on about there, Miss Law? That's where we think about what doesn't make sense on its own. So the next clause would be, she lived inside an old birch tree. Does that make sense on its own? She lived inside an old birch tree. Yeah, it does make sense on its own. You're not sat there wondering, well, I need a bit more information than that. You might be wanting it, but you might not be needing it. I have finished my sentence. And that's what this compound means. It means it's putting two clauses together, okay, and they make sense when they're on their own and their own sentences, and you've got your conjunction in the middle. So basically, it's just two simple sentences put together, joined by a fanboys. You could think of it like that. Then complex sentence. So a sentence containing a subordinate clause, for example, embedded or relative, or use a subordinating conjunction. So my sentence is, Jub released the happy endings before returning to her tree. Can you identify the conjunction in that sentence? Okay, well done if you said before. Okay, so I saw Wubba before, and I've got it here on my rainbow before. Okay, so Jub released the happy endings before returning to her tree. Okay. So I've used I saw Wubba. Let me explain to you what you're doing today. So, move myself down here. There we go. Your activity is to use a range of sentences to describe the witch in our term book. So our term book is the Lost Happy Endings, and we are going to describe the witch from there. Now, I have found pictures of the witch from the internet. They're not quite the witch that was in the story, but we're going to use these ones because they look very, very similar. Your focus is to use simple, compound, and complex sentences. And I want a range. I want at least one of each, okay? We don't want to include loads of simple sentences because that makes your writing not very exciting. And I know I've read lots and lots of pieces of writing, and year 4, yours is smashing. It's very exciting, but we're just trying to use a different range of sentences now. So I'm going to share with you mine. Oh, I'll put myself up here then. Okay. So this is my description. When you come to write yours, it doesn't need to be long. Half a page, that's all it needs to be. Okay, a paragraph, as long as you have used a range of sentences and you've used all 3 sentences a couple of times, then you've absolutely smashed it. So I'm going to read you mine, and then we're going to try and identify some of the types of sentences that I have used. So, the witch's grey, silky hair hung around her shoulders as she ate the rotten apple. Oh, I read that aloud. As she ate the rotten apple. As she ate the rotten apple. Now, this is sometimes why it's always good to read your work aloud, because you see your mistakes then. So remember that when you finish your work, read it aloud to yourself, because that's what I find best when I spot my mistakes. And it's okay to make mistakes, it's not a problem. So I'm just going to read that sentence again, make sure I have got that correct. The witch's grey, silky hair hung around her shoulders as she ate the rotten apple. The unhygienic hair was completely covered by her dark cranberry woolen cloak. She was an awful woman. The ancient baggy dark clothes on her petite frame made her appear bigger than she actually was. They masked the true shape of the witch, yet you can still see her hideous face. Her almond-shaped, sky-blue eyes were sunk into her dry, cracked face. Her long, pointy nose had a wart on the end of it. Her wrinkled skin looked like leather. Although she didn't care about her appearance, she would cover herself up when children screamed at her. So that is my description there. I wonder now whether you can pause the video and identify a compound sentence, a simple sentence, and a complex sentence. If you could maybe write them down, and then we'll go through some of them and I'll identify them to you. So have a go at identifying them yourself, and then we'll go through it together. You can pause the video now. Okay, well done for giving that a go. So I am just going to delete my witch here, and I'm going to make a little key, okay? So then we could, it's really clear what's what. So I'm going to use a highlighter, and I'm going to have yellow as my simple sentence. If I just write that here, simple. I am then going to have a blue as my compound. And then I am going to have a different colour for complex. I'm going to have a purple for complex as a highlighter. Oh dear, this happens all the time. There we go. That'll be fine. Complex. Okay. Now, when you maybe finish writing your paragraph, you can do this. Make a key and highlight your type of sentences. See whether there is a sentence that you use more than others. And maybe we could practice using the ones that we're not that confident using. So then we begin to be really confident with it. Okay, so I'm just going to whiz through. I know I have got a simple sentence here. She is an awful woman. Okay, it's simple. I haven't got any conjunctions involved. That is my simple sentence. Compound sentence then. I have got a compound sentence down. Where was it? I used yet. I bet, oh, there it is. I was about to say, I bet you could find it before I do. Here we go. So they masked their true shape of the witch. Yet you can still see her hideous face. I have used, I'm going to underline it in blue. Yet, oh, it's yellow, it's quite yellow. We'll roll with that. Yet is my fanboys conjunction that I've used to connect those two simple sentences together. And let's find a complex sentence where I have used I saw a wubba. I've got one here. Although she didn't care about her appearance, she would cover herself up when children screamed at her. Okay, I have used although as my conjunction. I saw wubba. And you might have noticed I have used this conjunction at the beginning of the sentence. Okay, if you use your I saw wubba conjunction at the beginning of your sentence, absolutely fine. Just don't forget to add your comma in your sentence. The best thing to do is write your sentence, read it aloud, and just see where you've got that natural pause. So listen to me read the sentence and see if you can hear that natural pause. Although she didn't care about her appearance, she would cover herself up when children screamed at her. Okay, you may have heard a tiny little pause after appearance, and that is when I put my comma in. We will go through more of that tomorrow. We'll be using different I saw wubba conjunctions, maybe the ones that are a bit more challenging, and I'll explain about them going at the beginning and in the middle of the sentence. But that's tomorrow's lesson. Today, you are going to write a descriptive paragraph of the witch in the Lost Happy Endings, and you're going to use a range of sentences to describe her. Have fun with that, everybody, and I'll catch up with you soon. Bye bye.